Hello everybody, it's Jamie from Old Shipping Lines, and welcome back to a new video. In our latest series, Museum Ships Remembered, the ship we'll be talking about today is one we all know and love. The White Star Line tender, the SS Nomadic. In this video, we'll cover her entire story, from her construction to where she is today. I hope you all enjoy it. The SS Nomadic would be owned by the White Star Line. She was constructed by the famous Harland and Wolff shipbuilders in Belfast, Ireland. In 1910, the White Star Line commissioned the SS Nomadic, along with her sister vessel, the SS Traffic, to serve their new ocean liners, the RMS Olympic and the RMS Titanic. These liners were too large to dock in Cherbourg Harbor, so the SS Nomadic was tasked with transporting passengers, baggage, mail, and supplies to and from the larger ships anchored offshore. Now, if we talk about the specifics of the vessel, the Nomadic had a gross registered tonnage of 1,273 tons. She measured 220 feet in length with a beam of 37 feet. Her propulsion came from two single-ended coal-fired boilers and a pair of compound steam engines, each powering two 7-foot diameter triple-bladed propellers. This allowed her to reach a service speed of 12 knots. The Nomadic was built entirely of steel, featuring steel frames, beams, bulkheads, and riveted hull plating. She had 4 operational decks with various hold spaces below and could accommodate up to 1,000 passengers when fully loaded. Passenger spaces included lounges on both the lower and upper decks, along with open deck areas on the bridge and flying bridge decks. The ship was divided into separate sections for first and second class passengers, with first class passengers enjoying the forward areas of the vessel. A small section at the aft of the lower deck was reserved for third class passengers, serving as an overflow from the SS Traffic. The interior of the Nomadic was designed to match the high standards of the liners she served, the Olympic and Titanic. Unlike most tenders of her time, she offered more luxurious amenities, including cushioned benches, tables, porcelain water fountains, gender-specific bathrooms, and a buffet bar. Her first-class lounges were particularly ornate, featuring intricate decorative joinery and plasterwork, reflecting the elegance of the larger ships. The Nomadic was launched on April 25, 1911, and completed on May 27, 1911. Although she was built in Ireland and built for the United Kingdom, she operated in French coastal waters with a French crew, which resulted in several unique features, including imperial and metric draft marks on opposite sides of her hull. The Nomadic truly entered history on the evening of April 10, 1912. The transatlantic train, the New York Express, arrived at Cherbourg Maritime Station at 3:30 p.m. on that sunny spring day. A total of 172 first and second class passengers had made the 6-hour journey from the Gare Saint-Lazare in Paris to the Cherbourg docks. Upon arrival, passengers were invited to enter the brand new maritime station, which was set to officially open on July 2, 1912, to complete some administrative formalities. They were also informed that the RMS Titanic had encountered a delay due to a near collision while departing Southampton. The SS New York, which was tied to the RMS Oceanic, had drifted and nearly struck the stern of the Titanic, causing her to arrive in Cherbourg an hour later than expected. At 5 p.m., 142 first-class and 32nd-class passengers were invited to board the SS Nomadic. Meanwhile, the remaining 102 steerage passengers boarded the SS Traffic, which was already loaded with mail, baggage, and crates of French wine, champagne, and cheese from Normandy. Additionally, 75,000 pounds of meat, 15,000 bottles of beer, 12,000 bottles of mineral water, and 12,000 bottles of wine were also brought on board. Nomadic's waiter, Auguste Aide, was tasked with serving some of the wealthiest individuals in the world. Among the first-class passengers boarding the tender on their way back to the United States were Titanic's millionaires: industrialist Benjamin Guggenheim, New York tycoon John Jacob Astor, along with his 18-year-old pregnant wife, Madeleine, Sir and Lady Duff Gordon, Denver socialite Margaret Tobin Brown, and Quig Baxter, who was traveling with his Belgian fiancée, Berthe Menet, under the pseudonym Mrs. de Villiers. As they set sail around 5:30 p.m., the steam whistles of the tenders echoed throughout the Bassin du Commerce. The Nomadic and Traffic made their way to the Grand Raid, where they stopped their engines 30 minutes later and waited an additional half hour for the Titanic to enter Cherbourg waters. At 6 p.m., Louis Castel, the French maritime pilot, was welcomed aboard the Titanic's bridge by Captain Smith. The pilot then guided the liner into Cherbourg Harbor. The flagship of the White Star Line dropped anchor in front of the dike's central fortress at 6:30 p.m. as the evening light began to fade. Unfortunately, many photographers missed the Titanic's arrival due to the poor lighting, anticipating better conditions for the next time the White Star liner would visit the continent, resulting in very few photographs of the occasion. The Traffic was the first tender to board the liner, not because she was closer to the Titanic, but because she was transporting the baggage of the first-class passengers. As a result, the Titanic's millionaires found their steamer trunks already in their cabins or suites. Shortly after, the Nomadic arrived at the starboard side of the Titanic, allowing her 172 passengers to finally experience the ship of dreams. The ballet of the tenders, passengers, and cargo continued for about 90 minutes. At 8 p.m., as darkness fell, the Nomadic's whistle sounded a salute to the Grand Liner before the tender made her way back to the maritime station with some cross-channel passengers on board. 10 minutes later, the Titanic blew her whistle 3 times and weighed anchor. The majestic transatlantic liner turned around and set course westward for Queenstown, now known as Cove, Ireland, where she was scheduled to arrive the following morning. For the Titanic passengers who boarded the liner in Southampton, the stopover in Cherbourg was mostly a fleeting memory. It occurred at sunset, and many were enjoying dinner while the small tenders carried out their tasks. However, a few passengers did remember the stop in Cherbourg, including Thomas Andrews, who wrote to his wife on April 10th, 1912.
We reached Cherbourg in nice time and took on board quite a number of passengers. The 2 little tenders looked well. You will remember we built them about a year ago. We expect to arrive at Queenstown about 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. The weather is fine and everything's shaping for a good voyage.
First-class passenger Margaretha Emerentia Fröhlicher Steli wrote,
"Warm greetings before the departure. We boarded a small vessel which will take us to the liner. The ferrying lasts 30 minutes. Greetings to the Reverend. I kiss you, Mum."
On the morning of April 15th, the Cherbourg Eclair reported the tragic fate of the Titanic. Flags flew at half-mast on all public buildings. In Cherbourg Harbor, the community couldn't help but reflect on the 274 passengers they had witnessed boarding. Tragically, 115 of them were lost. When war erupted in August 1914, the White Star Line tenders Nomadic and Traffic were still in operation for transatlantic liner service in Cherbourg. Transatlantic routes remained open until 1915, but were ultimately suspended following the sinking of the RMS Lusitania by the German U-boat U-20 on May 7, 1915. Later that year, the British government requisitioned RMS Olympic and RMS Britannic, which would later be known as the HMHS Britannic, for wartime service. By that time, the Kaiserliche Marine had developed the formidable UC-200 naval mine, alongside a flotilla of UC-type mine-layer U-boats equipped with 14 to 18 mine tubes. The UC-200 was a moored contact mine that carried a 265-pound TNT charge. These mines were anchored at predetermined depths and detonated upon contact with one of the protruding horns. From the onset of the war, securing the supply chain from the UK and the USA to France became crucial. Bordeaux and Saint-Nazaire harbors emerged as primary targets for German mine layers, making it essential to clear French ports of this hidden and dangerous threat. To combat marine mines effectively, the French Navy requisitioned thousands of trawlers, tenders, small boats, and steamships of various sizes, converting them into auxiliary minesweepers. The French Navy began to show interest in the Nomadic and the Traffic in November 1915, but it wasn't until March 1917 that they ordered a preliminary study. On April 3rd, 1917, the French Navy shipyard in Cherbourg submitted its report on both White Star Line tenders. The report examined the ship's general characteristics and initiated preliminary investigations for the installation of a sweeping apparatus. Signed by naval engineer Raymond Daval, the report clearly stated,
"The transformation of both steamers Traffic and Nomadic would be fairly easy and doesn't require removing any roof. The sweep winch could be installed on the bridge deck after some minor reinforcement works, and the kite wire would be sent directly from the winch to a 3-roller fairlead installed on the stern. Additional equipment will be required. A pair of davits each side for maneuvering the floats, otters, and depressors. That said, we must not ignore that the lack of power will reduce the average speed from 8 knots to 5 or 6 knots, both ships having poor performance in bad weather, and therefore they will be mediocre minesweepers. Only their shallow draft 1.85 meters for Nomadic and 1.53 meters for Traffic makes them effective for sweeping activities."
The requisition order for both ships was issued on April 7th, followed by several wireless messages urging their swift transformation. On April 28, 1917, Lieutenant Henri Dureau de la Guénonnière was dispatched from Saint-Nazaire to Cherbourg to inspect the steamships Nomadic and Traffic and assess the modifications needed for crew accommodations. Engineer Daval submitted a second report on April 30th, outlining the required changes.
Ships to be provided by Maison Bossière in Le Havre, 2 pairs of davits and a 3-roll fairlead on a raised platform. 90mm gun. Installation aft on the shelter deck will not cause any problem. Ammunition's elevator needs to be arranged. Crew accommodations. The third-class saloon will be fitted out as the crew quarters and equipped with tables, chairs, and hammocks. Officers will be housed in the cabins on the main deck. The first-class saloon aft on main deck will be fitted out for the captain's cabin. If needed, the wheelhouse will be covered. Wireless. Both ships are already equipped with two 12-kilowatt dynamos. One of them would be enough for providing lighting on board, and the second one could be used for powering a wireless set.
Work commenced on May 7th, 1917, and was scheduled for completion by the 27th. During May 1917, the Cherbourg Naval Base explored the feasibility of installing a captive balloon on the minesweepers Nomadic and Traffic. Engineer Richard Tremblot oversaw the project and created the plan on May 21st. His report is still preserved in the French Navy Archives Department.
Answer to wireless message 15810 dated 9th May 1917. Here are the results of the study on the installation of a captive balloon on board tenders Traffic and Nomadic. As described on the plan, the winch will be placed on the third deck after accomplishment of some minor consolidation and modification works. Some ventilators and railing have to be removed. Wireless installation doesn't need to be modified as the 60-degree clearance angle required. The positioning cone doesn't cause any trouble. The steam winch piping would be quite easy to install, but if the boiler's operating pressure is too low for the winch, then we could use a 70 horsepower Dion engine. An electric winch can't be used because of the low power dynamos.
Although the project received approval, the captive balloon was not installed until October 1917, when the ship was taken out of service for engine repairs. Subsequently, the ship's armament was enhanced with the addition of Giraud-type anti-submarine grenades and smoke grenades. On June 2nd, 1917, the minesweepers Nomadic and Traffic were sent to Saint-Nazaire under the command of Lieutenant Dureau de la Guénonnière. Nomadic served as the flagship of the Saint-Nazaire minesweeper squadron, which was led by the head of the Basse-Loire minesweeping group. The squadron included the escort ships Crozon and Flandres, as well as the minesweepers Nomadic, Traffic, Auroch, and Kerdonis, along with the guard vessel Jacques Quartier, and 4 sub-hunter speedboats. During the war, the French Navy utilized the Oropesa-type sweeping apparatus. The Oropesa is a streamlined towed body designed for minesweeping, serving to maintain the towed sweep at a specific depth and distance from the ship. Its name comes from HMS Oropesa, the ship on which it was developed. At that time, there was no effective mine detection device available. The only method for destroying a moored mine was to tow a sweep from a shallow draft ship and cut the mooring wire. This would cause the released mine to float to the surface, where it could be destroyed by gunfire or defused. This operation was incredibly hazardous, as evidenced by the list of losses, which included 48 auxiliary minesweepers sunk by mines or U-boats between 1915 and 1918. The sweep wires were held underwater by a kite and wooden prisms, which maintained a specified divergence between the cables. To prevent the entire sweep from sinking, it was attached on both sides to a float known as the pig. The cutting apparatus comprised 4 cutters spaced along each sweep wire. As the mine's mooring wire slid along the cables, it would be severed by one of the cutters. The logs of the minesweeper Nomadic, preserved by the French Army Archives Department in Cherbourg, detail the missions carried out by the ship between 1917 and 1919. The tactics employed to clear the mouth of the Loire River of enemy mines involved making several successive passes through the North Channel between Le Croisic and Pornichet, and the South Channel between the Lambarde Plateau and Pillar Island. Within just a few days, the Nomadic's crew marked their first mine on the scoreboard. In her first 30 days of operations, minesweeper Nomadic destroyed a total of 9 German mines. One of these mines exploded close to the ship, causing damage to the ship's clock and the captain's wash basin. Additional damage occurred to the hull on July 25, 1917, while the ship was maneuvering near the Saint-Nazaire piers. Poor weather and strong swirling currents made steering challenging, and despite fully reversing the engines, the Nomadic collided with the pier at 6:15 p.m. The damage to the ship's structure and the sweep winch necessitated significant repairs, leading to Nomadic being withdrawn from service for over a month. In September 1917, the reciprocating engines were also damaged. During the repairs, a captive balloon and its steam winch were installed on the flying deck bridge. The Caquot Type P balloon was used to locate wrecked ships, floating mines, and U-boats. Later, the ship was outfitted with a searchlight as well. The captive balloon was deployed numerous times from May 1918 to 1919, including to locate the wreck of the SS Norhaug. The Norhaug was a 73-meter-long Norwegian coal cargo ship that sank after hitting a moored mine. Laid on May 23, 1917 by UC-21, a U-boat based in Belgium, UC-21 sank 98 ships and damaged 5 others during the war. The Norhaug went down within 15 minutes, tragically resulting in the loss of 5 seamen who were asleep in the crew quarters. The Nomadic located the wreck in the spring of 1919 when the sweep wires snagged the shipwreck. Fortunately, the crew later discovered a different kind of wreck, a large wine barrel. On December 18, 1917, Lieutenant du Réau de la Guénonnière was replaced by Lieutenant Albert Leveling. On March 8, 1918, Nomadic assisted the fishing boat Angelus de la Turballe, which had sustained damage after a mine exploded in her trawl. Nomadic towed the boat to a safer location near Pornic. On June 7, 1918, the Nomadic located a mine just 40 meters from the escort ship Crozon. The crew first retrieved the mine's anchor, followed by the chain and the mine itself. The bomb was later defused on board the minesweeper. The commandant of the Saint-Nazaire waterfront praised the brave crew and rewarded them with an extra ration of wine. In December 1918, the French painter René Pinard and his friend Marc Elder visited the Saint-Nazaire naval base. Marc Elder produced a detailed report on a minesweeping campaign, while René Pinard created several canvases aboard the minesweeper Nomadic and other escort vessels. Their collaborative work was published in 1919 under the title On Board Minesweeper Trawlers, featuring 20 drawings that depicted life aboard auxiliary ships during the war. The Nomadic was featured in 4 of the watercolors. In appreciation for the hospitality they received on board. René Pinard gifted drawings of Captain Le Villain, a signed copy of the book, and an exclusive pencil drawing of the minesweeper Nomadic with her captive balloon. Nomadic and traffic successfully kept the waters of Saint-Nazaire clear, with no mines remaining after December 14th, 1918. While recovering their final trophy, Lieutenant Le Villain, along with seamen Le Carpentier and Tonnerre, encountered rough seas while maneuvering one of Nomadic's lifeboats. Albert Le Villain was injured when his leg became trapped beneath the boat, but fortunately, they all made it back to the ship safely. Both tenders departed Saint-Nazaire on May 15, 1919, and headed for Brest, arriving on Saturday, May 17th. The crew began the decommissioning process for the ships. Just as the White Star Line tenders were preparing to sail back to Cherbourg, they were asked to remain in Brest for several months to ferry U.S. troops returning to their homeland. They were officially released in October 1919 after returning to Cherbourg in late August for extensive repairs before rejoining White Star's passenger liners. After the war, the Nomadic resumed her tendering voyages. Following the 1934 merger of White Star and Cunard Line, as well as the opening of the expanded port at Cherbourg, which enabled liners to dock instead of anchoring in the harbor, the Nomadic was no longer required for tendering and ceased those voyages. She was sold to the Cherbourg Tow and Rescue Society and renamed Ingenieur Minard. During World War II, the Ingenieur Minard once again served a vital role. On June 18, 1940, she participated in the evacuation of Cherbourg. Following this, she was requisitioned by the Royal Navy and stationed in Portsmouth Harbour, where she operated as an accommodation ship. The port of Cherbourg sustained significant damage during the war, rendering it impossible for large ocean liners to dock. The Ingenieur Minard was rescued from the shipbreakers and returned to tendering voyages from Cherbourg. She served the era's ocean liners, including the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. Ultimately, she retired from these duties on November 4, 1968. The Ingenieur Minard was initially laid up in Cherbourg, but was moved to Le Havre on April 26, 1969. She remained idle for 5 years until a private individual, Yvon Vincent, purchased her, saving her from being scrapped again. Her name was changed back to the Nomadic, and she underwent extensive conversion into a floating restaurant and function venue. In October 1974, she was relocated to the Seine in Paris. The Nomadic made a brief appearance alongside the Titanic in Cherbourg in James Cameron's 1997 film Titanic. However, by 1999, the business faced financial difficulties, and in 2002, Nomadic was seized by the Paris harbor authorities. To tow her beneath the Seine's bridges, some of her superstructure was removed. On April 1st, 2002, she was towed from Paris to Le Havre. Following Vincent's death in March 2005, the authorities sought to dispose of the vessel and began searching for a buyer for the Nomadic. If no buyer was found, she faced the risk of being sold for scrap value. Upon learning of her potential fate, heritage and maritime enthusiasts, including the French Titanic Society, Belfast Industrial Heritage, Belfast Titanic Society, and the Save Nomadic Appeal, launched campaigns to raise funds for her purchase. These efforts received strong support from the public, particularly in Northern Ireland. However, they were ultimately unable to gather enough funds to meet Nomadic's reserve price. The campaigns ultimately garnered political and governmental support. On January 26, 2006, the Northern Ireland Government's Department for Social Development purchased the vessel at auction for €250,001, just above the reserve price of €250,000. The Nomadic departed Le Havre to return to Belfast on July 12, 2006, and arrived near her original construction site on July 18, 2006. The vessel was welcomed back by the Minister for the Department for Social Development, David Hanson MP, the Deputy Lord Mayor of Belfast, Councillor Ruth Patterson, and several well-wishers. The Nomadic arrived piggybacked on a marine transportation barge contracted by the department. In December 2006, the Northern Ireland Department for Social Development established a voluntary charitable trust, the Nomadic Charitable Trust, to take ownership of the vessel and oversee her conservation and restoration. The NCT's stated goal is to restore the SS Nomadic and make her accessible to the public, ensuring she plays a key role in the ongoing celebration of Titanic, creates a lasting legacy to honor our maritime and industrial heritage, and serves as a catalyst for tourism, social, and economic development. Upon its appointment, the NCS began essential maintenance work, fundraising, and preparations for the planned restoration. A study conducted by Belfast City Council estimated the cost of restoring Nomadic at £7 million. Since then, the NCS has secured over £6.5 million in funding with major benefactors, including the UK Heritage Lottery Fund, the EU Peace III Fund, the Northern Ireland Tourist Board, Belfast City Council, and Ulster Garden Villages. In August 2008, the Nomadic was recognized by National Historic Ships and entered into the National Register of Historic Vessels as part of the National Historic Fleet. This designation highlights Nomadic's historical significance, joining the ranks of other notable vessels like the Cuddy Sark, Mary Rose, and the Royal Yacht Britannia. In August 2009, Nomadic was moved to Hamilton Graving Dock on Queen's Road, Belfast. This dry dock, which is itself a piece of maritime heritage, was partially refurbished through a partnership between the Belfast Harbour Commission and Titanic Quarter Limited. It is believed to be the original location where the Nomadic was fitted out, and it has now been leased as a permanent site for the vessel. By late 2009, the NCS had secured enough funding to initiate major conservation and restoration efforts. In February 2010, significant work began, starting with external blasting and priming of the steel hull to prevent further deterioration of the steelwork. In February 2011, the NCS appointed Harland and Wolff to carry out steelwork restoration and repairs, reviving a 100-year connection with the ship's original builders. The contract, valued at £2 million, encompassed the reconstruction of the missing bridge and flying bridge decks, hull repairs, and repainting the vessel in her original White Star Line livery. These tasks were completed by February 2012. With the restoration work being completed, the SS Nomadic is once again restored to her former glory, which brings us to the present day. The ship is now managed by Titanic Belfast Nomadic Limited and is part of the Titanic Belfast visitor attraction. You can still visit the tender of the RMS Titanic today, beautifully restored to her full glory. My dad and I had the amazing privilege and honor of seeing the SS Nomadic when I was 16 years old in 2017, and it was an unforgettable experience. At that time, I was still in the early stages of learning about the RMS Titanic and ocean liners in general. Personally, seeing the little tender in real life was an incredible experience that I'll never forget. And that marks the end of a video, my friends. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, if you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing to the channel, as that would help out the channel a lot. Now, if you have any thoughts, comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section down below, as I absolutely love reading your comments. And please let me know in the comment section down below as well what ships you would like me to cover in the future. Now be as well sure to check out our social media pages. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, and we also recently have a website, oldshippinglines.com, where we have articles of the ships we cover and we have book reviews as well. I think you will enjoy the website very much. Now, with that out of the way, guys, I wish you all a good night or day, wherever you are. Stay safe, stay happy, and we will see each other on the next video. Goodbye, my friends.